Alright guys, in this video I want to discuss with you something that pops up from time to time in emails that I receive. Now you guys are really good at finding great opportunities on Amazon. However, sometimes the opportunity you find might not be right for that individual person's circumstances. So what I wanted to do is make a video dedicated to this issue. It's something I've touched on previously, but I just want to go into it in a bit more detail to ensure that you guys don't make this mistake when choosing your Amazon FBA product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick things off by looking at an example product and the type of sales velocity that you'll need and how many units you'll need to purchase and the costs that are involved in that. So this is the water bottle example. Now for a second I want you to imagine that this review column does not exist and you're purely just looking at the demand column. And I mean, if you saw this column in an uncompetitive niche, you'd think, yeah, that's a really good product to get into. However, not all of us have the budget to actually launch this product successfully. So the three things you need to consider is, one, can you afford the inventory you need to actually launch this product? The second thing is, can you afford the PPC cost or whichever launch strategy you are using to launch at the sales velocity required to get ranked? And then finally, can you afford the restock of the inventory before you receive the income from your first batch of sales coming through, because that arrives a few weeks after the sales have actually taken place. So let's take a look at this water bottle example. So if you wanted to get ranked on this first page, or say the bottom half of the first page, you're probably going to need to be selling maybe 1,200-1,300 units for a 2 to 3 week period sustained. You know, that's your sales velocity that you're going to be aiming for in order to get ranked on this first page. So let's say 1,200. Now it might be more than 1,200, but let's just say 1,200 for this example. So 1,200, and if we say for 2 to 3 weeks, so if we say let's say 20 days, so we need to sell 1,200 per month. So over 30 days, we need to be selling 40 units per day. If we're going to be selling 40 units for the 20-day launch period, we need 800 units just for the launch period. Now you want a lot more units than that because you want to be able to launch and then stay on that front page for a good couple of weeks so you can generate some sales history, so that if you do, you probably inevitably will go out of stock on your first batch. By generating as much sales history as possible, when you then relaunch that product when your next batch of stock arrives, you've got a much easier job of getting your product re-ranked. So if we double this, so in this case you're going to need 1,600 products to launch your product over a 2 to 3 week period, and then stay in those organic positions for at least another 2 to 3 weeks as well. So 1,600 products, a lot of us can't afford to do that for our first product, especially for our first batch. You know, we're skeptical about Amazon still at that stage, so we don't want to invest too much money. So although this from a purely demand perspective looks really good, for many of us this might not be the right opportunity because the actual inventory we need for that first batch is too high. The other thing to consider is, can you afford not just the inventory, but can you afford to actually launch this product with the marketing methods you're going to use to obtain that sales velocity? So if we need to obtain 40 sales per day, now if we're using PPC, you could easily have a budget spending upwards of £100 a day to reach 40 sales per day. So can you afford those PPC costs? Now the PPC costs can be deducted from the sales you make, so you don't necessarily have to have that money up front. But I would certainly plan to have that money, because if you don't get many sales, then you're going to obviously accrue the PPC cost anyway. So that's the first two things. Can you afford the first batch of inventory? And then secondly, can you afford to launch the product? And then the final thing is, can you then afford the next batch of product? So once you've sold out of that first batch of say 1,600 units, you won't have received that money from Amazon yet. However, you're going to be wanting to order that second batch so you're not out of stock for too long. So always plan, I would always try and plan to be able to afford 2 batches of any product that I was planning to launch. So although this opportunity looks really good on the face of it with the demand being really high, it might not be the right opportunity for everyone. Obviously, just completely ignore the fact that this one's competitive. If this was an uncompetitive niche that had a good price point and there's no other issues with the product, I'm just talking about purely from a demand perspective and whether you can afford to compete in that niche. Something that might be a better example is, so that was a water bottle niche. This is the 2 litre water bottle niche. And you can see here, the bottom half of this first page, you only need probably 150 to 200 sales in a month to get ranked on that first page. So if we try those figures, so 200 divided by 30, that's 6 or 7 sales per day. So even if we said you needed 7 sales per day for a 20-day period, you only need 140 units to actually carry out your launch campaign. So if you're ordering, this is ideal, if you only want to say 300 units, this sort of niche would be where you'd want to be. And just because this lower half of the page has low sales doesn't mean you won't be able to make the same sort of sales people at the top are making. Quite often when I've launched my previous product is I arrive at the bottom of the front page having outsold those guys, but actually I'm selling similar figures to the people at the top because my product is actually better than the guys that are above me. So keep that in mind. Can you afford to launch a product? Can you afford the PPC? And can you afford to restock? And make sure that you don't get into a product where the opportunity is so good that you can't actually afford to see it through. So let me know what you think of this video in the comments below. If you found this content useful, please hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed, please do, and I'll see you guys in the next video.